Welcome to day 155 of 66 and 26, our journey to read through all 66 books of the Bible in 2026. We're in a new week. We're back in the book of Exodus. We're the second to last week that we're in Exodus. We'll finish off next week. We're in chapters 35 to 37 today. And you might notice when you read today that there is material that sounds very repetitive or redundant from what we already read before in God's instructions to Moses to construct the tabernacle, the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, and all the furnishings inside of the tabernacle, the garments for the priests, and all the rest. God had given that instruction before. Now they're actually going through the work of crafting, of sewing, of building all that God has instructed them. So there is some repetition here. Also remember that there was this episode after God had given them the instructions, then they fell into a sin of idolatry by crafting a golden calf, which they bowed down to worship. And Moses came back from the mountain and rebuked them and corrected them for that abomination against God. And yet God showed his mercy and grace and now is instructing them once again. So the repetition is a bit of a reaffirmation or a renewal of the instructions for building this place where God would dwell with his people in his grace. And one thing that we actually notice here in these chapters is that the people bring all of their gifts. They bring fabrics and they bring precious stones, and they bring their gold and they bring wood from their own collections, their own wealth, to bring that to Moses and to the craftsmen, the chief craftsmen, to build the tabernacle and all its furnishings. And they're so inspired by the grace of God in this moment that they give over and above what is needed for the building of the tabernacle. And they have to say, stop bringing us more because we have more than enough to do what God has instructed us. That's how abundantly the people gave out of their generous hearts because of the generosity of God and his grace. And that's a lesson for us. There's also a lesson in that we see the people of Israel going back and forth. Sometimes they're really joyful in their following of the Lord. Sometimes they are very unfaithful in following the Lord. And we see this in our own lives, don't we? We see the faithfulness and the unfaithfulness back and forth. And thankfully, God shows us his amazing grace. Now, that reminds me of something that I should really address, and that's the very beginning of our reading today in the Sabbath instructions. God gave more than once, more than a couple times, instructions to the people of Israel that they should not do any regular work on the Sabbath. 6 days they work and rest on the seventh day. And if anyone does work, here's what seems really extreme for us. If someone does work on the Sabbath, they should be put to death. That's how strongly God viewed the Sabbath. That's not how we view it anymore. We play sports and we do regular work and such on the Sabbath day. And we don't really take seriously that day, but God very much instructed the people that it was serious enough that if someone broke that commandment, they should be put to death. That's why when we get to the New Testament, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, are ready to stone Jesus when he seems to be doing those things that are forbidden on the Sabbath. But it was never really clear exactly what is regular work on the Sabbath. And so Jesus was doing that kind of work that was okay. It was allowed on the Sabbath, even though the people maybe had misread that. Now, when I read this instruction in Exodus chapter 35, that someone should be put to death because they had broken the Sabbath, I'm eternally grateful for the gift of Jesus Christ, who rescues us from our sin, no matter how grievous, so that we're rescued from the penalty of things like the death for breaking the Sabbath, for lying or having impure thoughts or anything else that would sin against God. We have this one in Jesus who rescues us from every failure to follow every one of God's commands.